WEEI for that. Welcome back in. Keyshawn, J. Will, and Zubin, ESPN Radio, the ESPN app. You can tell your smart speaker to play ESPN. We are Shay and Jordan Cornette, and we are in the holiday spirit here. I don't know what that song was, but thank you for it. Oh, okay, got it. We're presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, and that's where we're going right now because Patriots reporter Mike Reese joins us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And Mike, before we get to you, yesterday you had a classic back and forth with Bill Belichick on who will be the starting quarterback Monday night and also going forward. Take a listen.
Hey, Bill, with this being the first practice of the week and you guys going through your meetings the last couple days, were you sticking with Cam at quarterback?
Yeah. Mike, we're not answering that question every day. We've been through this for a month.
I totally respect that. I think just with the circumstances changing over the last couple days with the playoffs, that's why I asked. How about if I let you know if we're going to make a change? That sounds good to me. Is it partly due to competitive reasons that you don't want to let the Bills know?
Any questions on Buffalo, Mike?
Good. Thanks, Bill.
Just an absolute classic. All right, so we are joined now by Patriots reporter Mike Reese. And Mike, I got to tell you, the patience that you must have.
Professionalism, too.
I wish professionalism and patience. I wish I had some of that sometimes. I really do. But Mike, Merry Christmas to you. First of all, what do you expect the Patriots to do on Monday night and going forward right now? Because obviously they're not going to the playoffs. So what do they do with the guy under center?
Well, good morning, Jordan and Shay. Great to be with you. And I think after that, I would say I'm leaning toward Bill sticking with Cam Newton. You know, when he said, how about I let you know if I'm going to make a change, that would seem to hint at the status quo. And I think that's very interesting just because this is the first time the Patriots haven't had a game with playoff implications since the end of the 2000 season. And when I say that, like, they've had games where they haven't been able to improve their playoff seeding, or they've sort of been locked into whatever they're doing, but they always had the playoffs in mind. This is the first time where there's no playoffs, there's nothing to plan for, and you really have to start thinking big picture. And even Bill himself had mentioned that earlier in the week, saying, look, there are some possibilities where we can get some other players in the mix, and we'll meet about that and explore those possibilities. And that's sort of where those questions came from yesterday.
Super interesting, Mike, because everybody knows about the 11-year postseason streak being snapped, but you got to go back 20 years to be in a position here where there are no playoff implications of any sorts on game day. That is wild to me. Mike, the next obvious question, and me and Shay have been bantering back and forth with this one amongst several other discussions, but goes to, is the quarterback on the roster for the Patriots next season, or are they going to go elsewhere?
So this is a topic we quickly turn to now that the Patriots are out of the playoffs, and my hunch would be that the quarterback isn't on the roster right now, and I'll just sort of go through it fairly quickly. I mean, the start with Cam, and they've been very happy with everything Cam has done this year in terms of coming in, being a leader, named the captain, first guy in, last guy out. I mean, he's literally done everything they've asked for. I think ultimately they have to look at that and say, what do we see on the field, though? And they talk about accuracy and decision-making as the two things that are key for quarterbacks. And I just don't know if Cam has done that at the level that they'll see fit going forward. And saying that, they haven't surrounded him with great talent to get the best out of him. So there's that part of the factor. And Jarrett Stidham, he'll be here. He's under contract. But if they're not going to put him in now, it sort of leads you to question, do they see him as a viable answer going forward? I suppose that's possible, but it almost makes you think maybe they'll be looking to upgrade.
Okay, so going from there, again, we're talking to Mike Reese, ESPN Patriots reporter. If Cam would go elsewhere, which is what you're saying all signs are kind of leading to at this point, do you think he could still have a starting job in this league? You've watched him very closely.
It's been tough to assess, to be honest, because the pieces around him are not at the highest level.
Right.
So I do think he can help a team, but I think if we were to rank the quarterbacks 1 to 32, meaning that there's 32 starting jobs, also factoring in a pretty good draft class coming into the league, I think Cam's going to be closer to the back end of the 20s into the mid-30s, So I guess what I'm saying is I'm putting him on the edge, there. And the things that stand out, it's like the touch of some of the throws, the accuracy have been a little bit erratic, relative to what we've seen from him earlier in his career with the Panthers.
Mm-hmm.
Patriots way usually leads to winning and winning at a high clip. The Patriots way also lends to professionalism. It's a culture. And despite the fact that they haven't won, Mike, the way they want to, you haven't heard any drama coming out of that locker room. There hasn't been any issues like you would expect from maybe other teams in the very same predicament. What's the vibe like in that locker room as you've come to know it throughout this up and down season that's ultimately going to end up with no postseason?
Yeah, it's a great point, and they have, a solid core of character guys in the locker room. I would say the message from one of the best, Matthew Slater, to the team was, if you start something as a man, it's your duty to finish it. And that's sort of how they're approaching these final two games. And I'll go back to Cam. Cam has been outstanding in terms of coming into the Patriots and adopting to the way they do things. He's spoken publicly about how there's an aura about the organization, and he's really been a leader in this area in terms of, he gives everyone a nickname, he stayed upbeat, he stayed positive. The other day on the radio, someone had tried to ask him about the play calling and does he get frustrated? And he said, listen, there's no way you're going to turn me against anyone in this organization. So I think you tip the cap to Cam first and foremost in that area for the tone that's been set.
Without a doubt. All right, Mike Reese, ESPN Patriots reporter. Thank you so much for the time. We appreciate you getting up early and giving us some insight. Have a good one.
Thank you.
All right, so Mike Reese kind of echoed something similar to what I said yesterday, Jay. I was impressed with Cam Newton this year. Not on the football field, not the way he's thrown the football. Yes, he can utilize his legs. Two things that we questioned when Cam went to New England. We questioned his durability because he was coming off so many injuries. You didn't know what you were going to get. And then you also questioned how he would fit into the Patriot way. What this kind of diva mentality, the guy who had a runway in Carolina with, he would show off his fits every week, how he would fit into a system like Bill Belichick's where it's no nonsense. And Mike just said it. Like, he has not one time thrown anyone under the bus. He's taken accountability for every single thing. He never pouts, and that's a word we've used way too much so far this morning. It's only 6:40 a.m. Never pouts when he's been benched for Jared Stidham or when he's not playing well. He recognizes what's going on around him. And so I applaud Cam for that. Look, this isn't an easy situation. He didn't have an offseason. He's with a new team, a completely new scheme. I'm sure they're trying to adjust to him, et cetera. He has barely any weapons, and yet still he handled it like a true professional.
He absolutely did, and that's a hat tip to him and the organization for it not to have gotten ugly on either side during a season that's been clearly a letdown. Mike said a lot of interesting things in a very small amount of time there. He mentioned the 20 seasons it's been since they haven't played meaningful football. That stood out. Mm-hmm. Another thing that he said that was interesting, Shay, was in talking about Cam Newton. And when you asked him if you see a future for Cam in this league, if it's not New England, starting somewhere else. And this kind of laid it all out for me for what the vibe is in New England, how they're being covered there, how we should look at this situation along with Cam Newton. I see Cam Newton's game has declined. But Mike said, I don't know if Cam Newton can start in the league somewhere else because of what position he was thrust in here with the lack of talent and weapons around him. It was set up for a guy to not shine, to not be successful. So if you put Cam in a position to succeed, I think maybe he can, maybe he can't. But this was not a fair representation in Cam's return to the league coming off of injury to see if Cam truly has it or not. Mechanic-wise, his inability to not go down the field with some of these shots, his inability to be a threat with his legs like he typically had been, tell me he doesn't have the ability. But Mike's overarching thing is there was no talent around him to know needs to be factored into the assessment of Cam Newton this season.
To go one step further, how many times did they rearrange that offensive line? I mean, they had issues, so many opt-outs, especially on the defensive side of the ball. That's for another day, but they had issues staying healthy on that offensive line, like many teams do in the National Football League, and there was constantly a rotation. So that's just another when you have a quarterback that likes to run, You need a strong offensive line.
You also
and they
need somebody to
didn't
throw the
have that.
football to.
And that
Who's his
too.
best receiver this year? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, Julian Edelman, who was out.
Julie, yeah, they didn't have what is
Right.
the answer. I mean, they didn't have a guy to throw to.
Exactly. So
There's no playmaker.
I hope Cam gets another shot at this thing. And I know that like making mistakes and turning the ball over is something that Bill Belichick does not tolerate. And I get that too. So if it doesn't work out there, then fine. But it's just, I don't know that this year was a fair shake for him.
I also feel good that Mike Reese on the day before Christmas was able to have a conversation with people because Bill Belichick clearly ain't giving him that.
I know.
When asking the questions about Cam Newton.
I swear, I have no patience. I have no patience, none. And you can probably tell him